Hello and welcome to this episode of Small Business Small Talk. I am your host, Christy Smallwood, Chief Strategic Guide of Eagle Eye Strategies, located here in Louisville, Kentucky. And what is Small Business Small Talk? Well, I'm glad you thought to ask. It is an episodes of plenty of great conversation of small business owners that are doing it right now, just like yourself. And they're sharing their stories, their wisdom to help educate, engage, empower you a little bit, but also I pause because it's also entertaining because you just never know what we're going to talk about. Sometimes we are small business owners who are working it right now. So, but I also want to give a shout out to our sponsor partner, which is the Chamber of St. Matthews. A lot of my guests are coming because they are chamber members. And since Eagle Eye Strategies is also an affinity partner with the Chamber of St. Matthews, they are a sponsor partner for Small Business Small Talk. So with that, I am so happy to introduce my next guest for this episode. She is a very unique individual. And I say that in a very good way, because I don't even know how to start to describe Katherine Autin, but I know she's got a ton of experience in life, in business, and in her background with being a family of diplomacy. So that's also been very interesting. She's got a lot of world knowledge. So she's traveled a lot. She's been involved in all kinds of things. Her story is going to take up a lot of chunk here, but we're going to have a great conversation. I want you guys to welcome in and get to know Katherine Autin, who is CEO and owner, founder of more than one company. So it started with Parkinson's Partners, Cat's Jewelry and Gems, and now Visionary Caregivers. So when I say this lady is busy, she is on fire busy, and I'm surprised you get any sleep. Do you actually sleep, Katherine?
Sometimes.
So tell us, I know like you and I, you've shared your story with me and in different groups across the area multiple times. But I know that you've been in business, you've done multiple businesses for decades. So tell our audience how you got started and what's led you up to here. What's the backstory of Katherine?
Oh, wow. Well, we are in Louisville, Kentucky right now, but I'm from Alexandria, Virginia. And I grew up in a very political family, in meaning that my father was a reporter and a Pulitzer Prize winner. And so we had access to individuals that you don't normally meet. I went to school with congressmen and senators' daughters and sons. I've traveled the world. After high school, I actually went behind the Iron Curtain for a comparative political study in Russia, Poland, France, England, let's see, where else? For 6 weeks. And then I started college. I had planned on being a French teacher. And when I was getting ready to graduate from high school, my French teacher took me aside and said, the writing is on the wall. The funding for these types of programs are being cut. Now, mind you, this was 1973 when I graduated. And honestly, that was one of the best pieces of advice she could have given me. So my interest in what was going on around the world led me to combine my French, which I'd been speaking in school since I was 8, with political science. So I went AA in political science and English. And then I went to a very special school. It's a school that actually trains people for the Peace Corps in Brattleboro, Vermont, the School for International Training. And I was in their World Issues program. And this was a rather very progressive concept. We had what we called modules, 6-week modules on peace studies, third world issues like oil and gas. My senior thesis actually was on oil and gas, looking at Saudi Arabia and other countries. And so I took my international background and thought, okay, I want to work with the State Department or something like that. So I did work in DC for a while with an organization called Creative Associates. And this is something most people don't know, but I did statistics. The missions overseas help build wood stoves and help with health issues and things like that. And so I did statistics and study and presented that information to the International Communications Agency in Roslyn, Virginia. And so it was a fascinating, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. But I also wanted a family. I'd gotten married. And this is a story I'm telling because I want women especially to understand that just because you have adversity in life doesn't mean you have to just give up. There are so many other options to you, and you just need to be open to them. So I miscarried while I was on vacation in Disneyland, or Disney World rather. And instead of giving up, I was in the hospital. They said, you're okay. So we finished up our vacation. My friends and my husband were like absolutely floored. Why don't you want to just go and cry? Because no, that's not my way. So we did finish our thing, and we went back home. And then I went to the doctor, and he said, you're going to have a D&C. This was not a complete miscarriage. And he did it in the office, and I think I scratched the nurse. No anesthesia. It was horrendous. And so the doctor told me I would be out of work for a couple days. And I called in, and I'm telling you this because this is important. I called in to the office. Now, this was an organization that was operated, run, and owned by women with no maternity leave at all. And so our setup there was, if you missed time, you made it up. And so I planned on coming in on the weekend, making up my time, which I did. But when I got back to work officially, I found that they had docked my pay. And so I went to them, and they said, well, you didn't make up your time, and you weren't there, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay. It completely changed my world, because my thought is, if you're going to work, you need to work for someone that you respect, a job that you want to do, and a job that you're not sick to your stomach about getting up every morning and going, oh, I have to go to work.
Absolutely. No, and honestly, I'm glad that you're sharing the backstory that leads up to those defining moments, because, for a lot of our listeners, we're business owners, and we came from working for somebody else. And so it just validates that, yeah, it happens to a lot of us. If especially if you're listening and you haven't taken the leap yet to your own business, this is one of those moments that helps you decide. Like, I'm sure, right? Like, just starting to understand, you now become a number. Like, you're not as validated as you need to be in that environment.
Yep. I was furious. I had been working overtime for them with no pay for a couple of strategy sessions we'd had. And I really felt like I'd been stuck in the back with a knife. And I told my husband, I said, I've always loved jewelry. I had been taking on the side at a little college near where we lived in Fairfax, Virginia. And I literally kept going to these classes on gem history, gemology, jewelry, and I just loved it. And since I was a little girl, I loved jewelry. I'd always loved jewelry, but I never thought about making it into a career. So I told my husband that I was going to apprentice myself to a jewelry store, which I'd been buying things from in Old Town, Alexandria, Virginia.
Like, go earn it instead of paying for it.
And it was fun. It was run and operated by a woman. And so I did. I apprenticed myself to this woman. Now, remember, I just had a miscarriage, and I was kind of wacky emotionally. But I didn't care. I just kept going. So I found out 2 months after I got there that I was pregnant with my son, who actually is now 38. And so I stayed as long as I could, but I had one of those pregnancies where I was literally sick every day.
Oh,
every day. Until about the 7th month, and it was like every other day. Yeah, some women have those pregnancies where you're just like, I think I want to die. So here I am standing in the jewelry store trying to do things. So she put me upstairs to do inventory. I learned about inventory and how to keep track of it. She went overseas and bought jewelry from Hong Kong. So she would bring these gorgeous jade pieces back. So I kept doing my jewelry classes. I decided I wanted to get my jewelry appraisal degree, and kind of went from there. And honestly, that experience taught me a lot because I saw how hard it was to be a business owner, but I saw the rewards of making your clients happy in an honest, loving situation. This woman was amazing. So I couldn't stay there very long. I eventually went on to have my son in between working part-time at the National Academy of Sciences because I needed a part-time job until I delivered. And so once I delivered my son, I felt really good.
It's amazing how things change.
I was still on a roller coaster, but I went back to work after 4 weeks after a cesarean. I now say to women, please wait because your body is changing dramatically and it can be very dangerous. I went through a lot of ups and downs emotionally, but I kept looking into what could I do. And when my son was less than 6 months old, I started my very first company, the Jewelry Search. And the idea was based on, you're going to laugh, my husband loves books and reading. Absolutely. We have a library at our house. We always have. So he kept saying, I'm going to go do the book search. And I said, we talked about it. And I said, well, let's just do the jewelry search. So the company started and I was doing craft shows. I was selling while I was working at lunch to my companions, the staff and the secretaries. And it was strange. I would walk in, I had a scarf with jewelry pinned to it or something with a box with maybe a ring from, they used to go to the people that I took my pieces on consignment from would go to Europe and they would come back with pieces from Norway and Sweden and Italy and all these gorgeous antique like emeralds with pearls. And I was in heaven. But I had to work. Financially, I had to work. So I kept running my business. My husband worked for the Federal Commerce Department. And so we decided that it was time for us to move. He's from South Louisiana. He's Cajun. We decided that our son needed roots. So in 1985, we moved to just outside New Orleans in Metairie, Louisiana. Took my business with me. And at first I was kind of looking around. I found some part-time, temporary. Good thing I'm a good typist. Because I did a lot of secretarial and management things for quite a while. And eventually I started looking into where are the shows in Louisiana, how can I do this? So ultimately I did the shows, I did that. I opened up a shop in the French Quarter at one of the worst possible times. So again, pay attention, folks. You never know because at the time everything was booming. But it was also the beginning of the oil bust. And some of you from the 80s will remember this. People literally walked away from $1 million homes and businesses. The French Quarter was still there, but people were coming in and a lot of shops were boarded up. So what we called it was we are hemorrhaging because we were paying for our shop, our jewelry shop. Mm-hmm. And I absolutely loved working in the French Quarter because I could use my languages. I speak French, Italian, and I understand a little bit of Spanish. So I loved that part of it too. I got my international in there, but we closed the store. And from there, I created my next company. I kept going with the Jewelry Search, but it became a different type of thing. So instead of searching out jewelry for people or just offering them what I was getting on consignment, I bought my own pieces. And I sold sterling silver charms to zoos, aquariums, nature centers, cruise ships. And I would travel about once a month. I would be gone for 1 week. Now, remind you, I have at that point, a 5-year-old.
I'm gonna just pause you for a quick second because I want to make sure that our listeners understand what they're actually listening to. They're listening to somebody who has gone through not just any like personal adversity, but whatever the world is throwing at you that says you just need to quit, right? And what you've done is like, okay, we're in the midst of COVID right now. 2020 has been crazy. The word of the year has been pivot, right? Whatever. I'm like, I'm
New
hearing
normal.
like
New
new
normal.
normal. You've already accomplished pivot decades ago, right? This concept is nothing new for you to have to
No.
transform, like take what you've been doing and transforming it into something that's going to work next. So instead of just
True.
dropping it and walking away, you've completely continued to transform. So,
Yeah.
okay, back to, you have a 5-year-old, you've transformed it to silver
Silver
charms
charms.
for
Mhm.
zoos and aquariums
So
across the nation.
part of what I had to do was I had already built up a group of companies that I was buying from wholesale so that I could sell retail, obviously. But I had to reach out internationally to get the best prices. So I started buying from China and Hong Kong and Thailand and other places like that. And I also I had a company create a display case for me because people kept saying, well, what do we do with these charms? So we had an all-in-one sales kit that I developed. I had a company create a plexiglass case with the case leaning toward the clients. I researched colors that were the best color for sterling silver, and I discovered it was something called Francis Blue. I will never forget that color. And I had
I will just say
special
blue and
velvet
silver are
tray.
my colors. Blue and silver is
Huh?
my colors. Blue and
What?
silver are my colors. Like, I know
Yeah.
that because those are the colors that work best for me. Like, wink,
Yeah.
wink,
Yeah.
hint, hint.
So I had these little pads made with velvet and a tray that fit this, and it slid in, and all the supplies and all what we decided was we were in and people know this in Louisiana, but there's a saying down there that you give somebody when you purchase something, you give them lagniappe. Lagniappe is something extra for free. So I decided that every one of my silver charms was going to come with a beautiful brocade silk pouch from China. So I started importing thousands, like I forget what they call them, but huge, gigantic boxes. I would get this gigantic box with like 20,000 pouches because that way I could buy them at huge, it was like
Volume discount.
I think it was less than 20 cents a piece or something like that. Um, anyway, so I wanted a full kit. And on top of that, here's the other thing that really sold what I was doing, because nobody was doing this. And I'm a visionary. I'm always thinking out of the box. You can kind of tell from that. I learned very quickly how to do things for almost nothing. So what I did was I bought a laminating machine because I tried to do it on my own and the cost was ridiculous. So I bought a laminating machine and it's a cut rounder, so it will round the card. And what I made up was a color-coded card. There were 4 rows in each of the trays that went in the display, and I color-coded them with the same price per row, with a separate price if they wanted a chain. And then underneath the tray, you couldn't see it, but underneath the tray, because it was angled, was where all your backup stock was, whatever you decided to order, and all your pouches. And so the color-coded card, because it was laminated and didn't get destroyed, it would sit on someone's counter, and all they had to do was tape it down or lean it up or whatever they want to do. And it was a perfect purchase at the cash register. So I went and sold to, oh my gosh, beach shops. I would go all the way out to Panama City on my things, Destin, all that, Gulf Shores. I had stores. And also, I discovered something that I really fell in love with, and that was dive shops where people learn to do skin diving and whatnot. And so they have lots of money. And so they would have my cases, and I found a company that created these incredible detailed dive charms, like the hood, the mask.
Very
And
appropriate for the dive shop.
beautiful fish, which I love. I'm really into zoo and fish things, aquarium. So I created this dive line. I created a line for places like Hallmark. I created the Silver Seas collection first. I mean, sorry, Silver Safari was for zoos and aquariums. That was kind of my first thing. Then the Silver Seas, which was for cruise ships and nautical groups like the Gulfarium in Gulfport and groups like that. Or no, that's Fort Walton, sorry. And then the very last one I did, which really expanded everything, was people kept saying, oh, but you know what? I want something for my ski shop. And I was like, okay. So I found ski charms. And, I was buying from like 12 different companies to try to get all this. So inventory was a bitch.
Yeah, I can't even imagine, because not only, I mean, you've got tiny objects and lots of them. All I'm picturing is my great grandpa's garage with little cans of nuts and bolts everywhere. I'm like, no, it's overwhelming to me and you got to have to inventory that stuff. And this is
Yes.
before you could just tape on a label and scan it, right? This is.
Oh, yes. Long before that. Yeah.
And so again, as a reminder to our listeners and those that are watching, like, this is pre-technology automation everything, right? So all of this innovation that you're doing is truly things that people hadn't seen yet. Like what we're thinking now, I'm like, oh yeah, that's been around for years. Well, no, duh. But because when you did it before, it was brand new. Like this was a brand new thing back then. And now we're like, wow, what brand new things do we do now that just has a little bit of a wow factor? And what was that word again that you
so
used?
much? Which one?
They give a little extra.
Lagniappe.
Lagniappe?
Uh-huh.
Like with the P at the end, Lagniappe?
Uh-huh. It's Lagnia. I think it's PPE or PE. I can't remember. It's a French word. It just means something extra. So I would tell people you're getting Lagniappe with just because you don't pay extra for those pouches. And they love them. And some of them even bought them separate so they could sell them separately. Because I had them made to my specifications. They used to come with this little tiny snap. And I said, oh, no. I want a little brocade black top to it that's in a design. And they made all of mine that way. And I also got to pick my colors because I was buying in such bulk. So I had colors that nobody else had. So, yeah. Thinking out of the box.
So you're at this point with the jewelry, because we're gonna move it forward into your other ones. So you're at this point, you're doing great. You're on fire with the jewelry. Like everything's expanded. You've got like a ton of little charms everywhere, lots of inventory detail. Like I'm just seeing like there's enough charms. It looks like glitter everywhere. So that's what I see. Right. Is that what that feels like? Okay. So, and plus you had already started making your own, you're doing all this stuff. So
I have not started making my own charms yet. That didn't come till I moved to Louisville.
So what happened between there and here?
Okay. So I had to develop sales tools for myself. There were none. And there was also no mentors for women at that time. Men kept trying, this is women, you got to listen to this. Men kept trying to take my husband, because he would come with me and he was a great salesperson at the shows we did. And men kept coming up to him and saying, I'd like to hire you. And he goes, you need to talk to my boss over there. And they'd say, well, where is he? And he'd say, that's her right there, my wife. So listen, girls, don't let men intimidate you. I had so many men call me sweetie and honey and bunny. And I told one manufacturer that I used to work with, I said, do not call me honey. I am a colleague. I am a client. I am not a honey to you. My husband can call me honey, but you can't. And he was like, oh, well,
They don't know unless they're told. They don't think of it themselves.
But this was in the late 80s, early 90s.
Uh-huh.
And it was still thought of, okay, that women did not own companies. Women were not smart enough to figure it all out. Women were not even allowed to get their own bank loans without their husband or their father. In many states, you couldn't get a loan until, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago. It was ridiculous. But anyway, okay, so I'm in Louisiana. We decided, okay, we needed to leave Louisiana. My husband's job was changing, and we'd already thought about moving somewhere, but we didn't know where. And he got what we call a pink slip. This was the second one he'd gotten. And in the government, it's like you have an option of applying for something laterally in the same vein, or you can apply above it for like a higher position. So we did the research. They gave us certain states to look at, and we actually chose to come to Kentucky. And the reason for it is cost of living. The magnet schools, my son was an artist and very unique and very, very intelligent, kind of, the kids called him Brainiac, which he hated. But we needed to find a place. And I also wanted a place, because I love water, I wanted a place that had lakes and great parks and things like that. So we chose Louisville, and we came here in 1991 in September. And we thought we were leaving a place where we would be making more money and we would have a better quality of life and all that. And we came here, and his first paycheck, he got 50 cents extra because the taxes here were higher. And we had already looked into that, but we didn't know about an additional tax that they don't have in Louisiana. And additionally here, the inventory tax almost killed my business several times. So that was another story. I know people that understand inventory businesses are like, it's hard. You end up paying for inventory that you're holding on to for the next year, but it never stops. It's like a continuous tax to be, another tax to be in business. So we came here. I had to rethink because we knew we were coming to an equestrian area. So I started selling I sold to Churchill Downs, I sold to the horse park, I sold to all the little gift shops downtown, in the hotels, my same thing. But I had a theme now, which was equestrian, Kentucky, and I found products that were gorgeous. And then I would take charms and I would also make them into earrings, so that we could expand our line, because I didn't have that many horse charms. Then I started making charm bracelets, and the charm bracelets went like crazy. People loved them. They loved the earrings. They loved the charms. So I sold all through Kentucky, and I was still selling to my clients. I had clients all over the world. I mean, I had clients in Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, Bahamas, Bermuda, Japan, not on a consistent basis because it was hard. The communication was hard to get reorders, but I did have orders from them. So
because we didn't have, again, back to technology. It's not like you had
no internet.
No internet. This is we're still pre-internet in this conversation. And
Absolutely.
we're also pre-Hubby getting the news, right?
Yeah, the only thing you could do was a press release, and I wasn't even.
No, I'm talking about your husband's diagnosis.
Oh yeah, that didn't come until 2004.
Okay.
Yeah. So we haven't even gotten there. So Louisville, we loved it. We loved it. We got here, and it was hotter here than it was in Louisiana.
Yeah, welcome to the Ohio Valley, man.
We were
it's all 4 seasons in one day around here, and it can be sweltering.
We learned it, and Louisville's more in the climate that I grew up in Virginia. It's very, very similar, and so I loved it. David's loved it, and our son still lives here because he loves it. But we honestly, for a while, I had to back off every so often because I had to go get a job, and because we weren't making the money that we were thinking. And so I was running my business at night, on the weekends, in between, and working and raising my son and helping. My husband was traveling a lot at the time for his new job. he did not go lateral. He went high. He became the director of the international division of the U.S. Department of Commerce at the Gene Snyder building. And he was there until he retired 11, almost 12 years ago, I guess now. So we're going along and I'm selling my stuff. And along the way, I had to learn how to create catalogs. I hired somebody to teach me how to do cutouts on Photoshop. And then she created this gorgeous catalog. And from then on, I did all my own catalogs. I had a photographer take pictures because we did not have digital photography. Think about that. I created 16, I created my own 16-page catalogs, and I bought a huge printer like you get at Kinko's. And I built my business out. I got an SBA loan. I had an office on Bardstown Road and Grinstead. And this was the other thing. I'm thinking out of the box. I want to create my own charms so I can control them. I taught myself how to enamel with epoxies, which was something else I learned from somebody in New York who said, you can do this, because I was buying his stuff. And the next thing I knew, he goes, we're not going to do this anymore, but you can do it. He sent me a video, and I did hand enameling with my husband for years.
Again, hand enameling on charms, little bitty things. So we're talking like magnifying glass level needs, right?
Yes. And I was starting to have trouble because just getting a little dot in a hummingbird's eye, I was like, trying to get down in there and see what would, but I used a foot compressor. My husband would mix the colors. We had a gigantic basement that was finished. So we worked down there at night and then we'd go to bed. I mean, I never slept, nor did my husband. And we're paying for it now, health-wise. So don't do that, girls and guys. It's not good for you. We're both, I think, in our own ways paying for it. But I loved what I was doing. I loved it. I had 4 employees. We eventually had to close our shop. But in the meantime, what we did was we set up a CAD CAM manufacturing operation. We were doing computer-aided design and cutting it out on a CNC machine in wax. I found a person here Andrea Carnahan, who she would take the wax and then she would cast it in sterling silver. And then I would bring it back and I would enamel over my own designs. So we created pieces for companies. We did a piece in Georgia, Stone Mountain. We did a piece for a place in West Palm Beach. We sold pieces to the National Archives. I mean, we sold lots of really cool things, and I created designs of jewelry for zoos. We had a rockhopper penguin. We had the twin polar bears at the Louisville Zoo. I still have a few.
You also had you had the college licensing for U of L too.
Yes. I did. I got licenses for NABO because I was a NABO. I was NABO president in 2001 or 2. I can't remember now. I'd been involved with, that was one of the things I did when I came here to Louisville, was I wanted to find an organization that would help women, mentor and have programs for women business owners. So I went to the Chamber of Commerce, which is now GLI, and I said, where can I go to learn about what's the best place for women business owners? And they sent me to Betty Griffin. If anybody knows Betty Griffin, I know many of you probably do. She was one of the founders of NABO Louisville, along with several others. And I can't remember everybody's name right now. Margaret was one. Anyway, that was years ago. And I was so impressed with Betty. She talked me into joining NABO. The best thing I ever did. I mean, besides marrying my husband, best thing I ever did. NABO taught me I didn't like to speak in public, and I became the legislative liaison there. So
look at you now. Just look at you now.
It's a whole different world. You. I wasn't shy because I was shy before I started my business, but you can't be shy in business. No. If you're shy in business, you're in the wrong world, because you have to promote yourself in some way or another. You're selling who you are, your essence, your beliefs, your values. You're not just selling a product. I'm sorry, people, you're not just selling a product. You have to remember that, because people buy from people they trust, like, and want to be connected with and want to help. So anyway, NABO did great things for me. I was connected with all kinds of women business owners who taught me tons and tons and tons of things that I had never heard before. Marketing, strategic planning. I've been to so many strategic planning meetings, I can run them myself. I've done team building. I've done human development planning. I've done so many things. So training is a big thing. My degree is in international studies and cross-cultural training. So I also did that at the same time I was running my business. Okay, so NABO, all of that, keep going. I finished my presidency and we went to the doctor because my husband was having some issues. We had done, and this is where it first started. My husband got up to speak at an international women's business conference, which I was involved in, and Ann Northup got up to speak, and she was great. I got up to speak, and then my husband got up to speak, and this man who could speak for an hour, perfect humor, perfect memory, never miss a beat. He's just perfect. He's perfect at it. He was born that way. He starts stuttering and repeating himself. He was visibly nervous. And I was like, okay, we had been seeing signs that something was wrong. It never in my wildest dreams occurred to me what his diagnosis was. We knew nobody with this. So after 3 years, and seriously, it took 3 years to get a diagnosis, and this is not uncommon. We went to a neurologist that the doctor referred us to, and he said, well, after looking at him and making him walk and do this kind of thing, checking the neurological status, he said, well, you have Parkinson's. And my husband, who had been thinking he was losing his mind, was like, yay!
It makes sense now. It all makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. He was like, he really thought he was losing his mind. And nobody in his family had Parkinson's, and nobody that we knew personally. We knew, Muhammad Ali and several other people, but not somebody personally. And so my husband, David, is like, oh, I'm so relieved. And I'm like,
what? Yeah.
He was 51. I'm 3 years younger. I'm still in the prime of my life. And I'm thinking, oh boy, things are going to change. I had no idea how much they're going to change. So at first it wasn't that bad. The doctor literally gave him his medicine and said, here's your medicine. I'll see you in a year. And as a business owner and somebody who's intelligent, I was like, that does not work for me. So in the waiting room, there was a book, Parkinson's for Dummies, and they had several of them. And so I asked,
actual book.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of, yeah. So I asked the nurse, because they had several. I said, could I take it and bring it back? She goes, no, just take it. So I had a business flight the next day. I don't remember where I was going now, because it was a
blur.
It was horrible. So I read I'm a very fast reader. I can read a book in a couple of hours. So I'm reading this book on the plane, and I am bawling. I am literally, tears are coming out of my eyes. I'm feeling sick to my stomach. And I'm thinking, oh my God, there's so many things that happen with Parkinson's. I had no idea. There was so much at that time that I did not know. There was no one to guide me. And the doctor gave us he didn't say, you're going to go through this first, you're going to go through this. It was just like, here's your medicine. I'll see you in a year. In the meantime, we'll probably tweak your medicine, blah, 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 blah.
So no guidance, no support. This is brand new territory for both of you at that time.
Or guess what? He didn't tell me that there was an organization out there, the Parkinson Support Center of Kentuckiana, that could help us through this.
Oh,
Here in Louisville.
was,
He told us nothing, no support group, no guidance, nothing. So here I am on this plane. I'm sure people thought that somebody must have died because I wasn't making noise. I was crying silently because I was embarrassed, but I had tears just pouring out of my eyes. So I get off the plane. I don't even remember what I was doing business wise at this point, but it was such a shock to my system, my brain, physically, emotionally. I wanted to call my mother. I wanted to call my sister, my brothers. I'm the oldest of 5, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, it's downhill from here. There's no other way to think about it. From that day, it changed my life. It changed our lives. And I think it's a really good thing that I responded the way I did because I evolved. And when I got back from that trip, it wasn't too long. It was a couple of years. My husband had to retire. He'd gone in the hospital because he was so almost paralyzed. He could barely move. The medicine wasn't working. And oh, wait, I skipped something important. Okay. After he was diagnosed and gave the medicine, my mother passed away within like a month and a half. And so we're at the funeral, and my husband is telling me that he's having chest pain. And I'm thinking he's having a heart attack or something else. So we rushed him to the hospital. I never got to see my mother's burial or anything. So we rushed to the hospital, and they said, well, he hasn't had a heart attack. He hasn't had a stroke. And I said, well, could it be Parkinson's? And they're like, no, it couldn't be Parkinson's. Well, meanwhile, his eyes, he couldn't barely open his eyes. He was walking around with his eyes closed, so he couldn't drive. And he did all the driving at the time because I was a mom taking care of my son. And I drove us home the very next day from Wisconsin, Ashland, Wisconsin, Lake Superior, all the way to Louisville. Called the doctor in the meantime and said, hey, something's wrong, blah, 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 blah. The doctor was on vacation, guys. And I didn't get a call back. I just got this message that the doctor was on vacation. And so I left this urgent message like, something's wrong. Could it be the medicine? What do I need to do? So about a week later, maybe a week and a half, the doctor on call called, and he says, well, I understand your husband's having a problem. And I said, yeah. And I explained to him what was going on. He goes, oh my God, don't let him take any more medicine. And I'm like, what? He says, tell me what's on the bottle. And so I told him, and he says, oh my God, he's being double dosed. And I said, could that be causing his chest tightness, his kind of pain, not being able to open his eyes, clearly like they were scrunched up? He goes, yep, because it's neurological. It's affecting the brain. I freaked out. And so we stopped that, and the doctor said, we'll get you a different prescription. And I'm telling this because this is what really led me into do what I'm doing now. Okay, so about a week later, I get a call from the nurse. I didn't know at the time that the neurologist nurse was his wife, but she called, and actually she called my husband. He's sitting at one end of the couch, I'm at the other end, and I hear her yelling at him. She literally said, why didn't you call us? You knew there was something wrong. And he said, my wife did. I did. My wife did. I did. We called several times, and the guy on call didn't even call us back. Oh, she was screaming at him. I made my mind up right then and there. No way is he going to continue to see that doctor. No way. So they got his medicine straightened out. He was fine. But for several weeks, my husband was walking around with chest tightness, pain in his chest, scrunched up eyes, very strange neurological symptoms. And luckily, there was a conference, a Parkinson's conference that somebody told me about, my best friend at the time, actually. And she said, you need to check this out. It's downtown. I think you can learn something about his Parkinson's. So I went there. Best decision in the Parkinson's world I ever did. So I met up with the executive director of the Parkinson Support Center of Kentuckiana, Vicki Stanley. And I met up with someone who I'd known before from NAVO, Amy, and we were talking, and she said, there's a doctor at U of L. Your husband needs to see her. Dr. Litvan is the international researcher, and she's a Parkinson's expert. So we went and we saw her, everything switched. And this is where it all starts. The doctor thought he had something called Parkinsonism, which is not, or Parkinson's plus, they call it now, which was not typical Parkinson's. And so what she thought he had was something called multiple system atrophy, where your systems, your autonomic systems shut down. Your blood pressure starts going haywire, your breathing, etc. over time. And it had at that time a 5 to 7 year life. Like you die at the end of 7 years, probably. It's a terrible, terrible, fast moving disease. And there wasn't a whole lot known about it at the time. I want people to think about this. For 3 years, we literally went to this doctor thinking that my husband had this thing called MSA. People who get diagnosed with things that are incorrect will understand when I say this. I did not see these signs. We were checking his blood pressure. We were watching everything. I did not see everything that the research showed. And at the end of 3 years, I finally asked the doctor, I said, I just don't see what's, by now it would have shown itself. And she said, no, I don't think he has it.
So it took 3 years just to get to deciding what you don't have. And I know, like, and I'm going to pause for a quick second.
Yeah.
And I'm actually going to pause for a quick second. So pausing for that quick second to just think it through, like it took 3 years just to get to this is not what it is. So this whole trial and error kind of stuff, it's not only affecting, the health of your husband, it's affecting you, your son, and businesses that you may have, like it's caused chaos for 3 years in this whole thing.
Yes. And in the meantime, after my mother died, I decided that I was going to have to change my jewelry business. So I started a consulting firm because I've been mentoring women business owners and jewelry companies for a long time. And so my company, Future Focus Consulting, was created to do that. So I could do that on my own time, and I didn't have inventory and all that. So I was sort of slowing down on the jewelry a little bit, but still doing it. By that time, we had a full website. We were, creating our own, etc.
Oh, we're on the internet stage now.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry.
We're on the internet stage now. Yep. I didn't even go there. University of Kentucky created a fantastic website for me in 1997. And I was one of the first wholesalers in the country, jewelry anyway, to be doing that. So yes, again, I'm a futuristic person.
Yeah, just keeping everybody with the timeline and technology, the chaos of trying to live in this.
Here we are, 3 years. Now they say, okay, well, you really do have regular Parkinson's, but you do have some unique symptoms. So, we'll just pay attention. So meanwhile, he'd gotten to the point where he ended up in the hospital. And it was because of this that I'm doing what I'm doing now. In the hospital, he was in Fraser Hospital here in Louisville. And what they were doing was taking him off his meds. They call it a med holiday. Taking him off his meds and trying to figure out what they could do to help him move. He literally was paralyzed at night and could not turn over. It was as though he was laying in a casket and all I could do was push. He would wake up and go, Katie, I can't turn over. And I would have to help him. This is horrible, people. You can't even imagine. Yeah. So he's in the hospital. The last day the doctor came in, he gave his meds. He said, okay, this is going to allow you to move. We've doubled your medication. And I'm like, okay, I trust you. I trusted this new doctor. So that night, the nurse came in and she said, here's your meds. And I looked in the cup and I said, there's only one pill. There's supposed to be two. And she said, well, the pharmacy didn't get it in time. I said, that doesn't work. Look, imagine yourself at night in bed and you are paralyzed because you can't turn over because you're so rigid from your Parkinson's. It's like being dead. And her mouth opened up and she went and got the medicine. And I thought to myself, oh my God, what if I had not said something? We would have gone home and he would have ended up in a nursing home. I'm certain of it because he was in such bad shape. He would sit in a chair and he could not even lift his arm. It felt like a ton. So time passed. We were very involved with the Parkinson Support Center. And I decided that I had to start a company to be a patient advocate, to help people through this journey one-on-one, to educate their families. I'd been running Parkinson support groups since the minute I became involved with the Parkinson Support Center. I'd already made myself a Parkinson's expert by going to conferences. I'd gone to Atlanta. I had read everything. Plus, I have known and helped at that time probably over 100 people. So I started my company, Parkinson Partners, to be a patient advocate, to do education, and to run support groups, because that's where people learn. They learn from each other. They don't learn much from the doctors.
Absolutely.
So we're going to fast forward. That was 8 years ago. 2012, I started Parkinson Partners. I've helped now about 200 people with Parkinson's and their families. To me, it's a team effort. If the families want to be involved, I do kitchen table educating, keep them involved. So I decided that I had to do something additional because caregivers, I'm a caregiver. I've been a caregiver more than 16 years. It is a huge burden. It's extremely difficult. It's one of the most difficult jobs in the world. So with my partners, my team members rather, Vicki Spencer-Rouse and Joy Walters, we'd been planning on starting a company, Visionary Caregivers. It's my company, but they're my team members. And we created a whole process. February 11th, we launched, and guess what? COVID hit.
Right.
and we weren't ready to do what we did. So Vicki suggested that we start doing Zooms. I didn't even know what Zoom was. We did 3 Zooms a week for about 45 minutes to an hour, helping caregivers come in and talk and listen to what we had to, 70 years of experience between us, what we had to share so that we could help them help others and also help themselves. So eventually I stopped the 3 a week because it was too much. Now we're doing 1 a week with Visionary Caregivers. The whole concept of Visionary Caregivers is we are building a global community. I believe we can learn from everyone to help us, and we can help them by teaching them what we know. Caregivers do not have enough support. There are no federal programs. There's the AARP, but there's no real money. So I created a website. It's a membership site. We are offering expert speakers from around the country. We are also offering a masterminds program, which is our secret sauce. I've run masterminds in the past for NAVO for 9 years. And I truly believe that we're doing something, especially during COVID, that is so needed. We have people coming in. We had somebody from Uganda come in to our Zoom. So it's Thursday mornings, every Thursday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern time for about 45 minutes. There's a topic for about 15, 20 minutes. Then I open it up and I just let people have a free for all until we close it off, say, I'm sorry, it's almost 10:45. So we're gonna
ding, 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 ding. Time to go.
And sometimes I let them go over because it's a serious discussion, and I understand that, and I'm okay with that. We have had people from California, from New Jersey, from Idaho, from Virginia, just all over, and they can come and go. It's a free event. But our membership site is what I'm really trying to let people know. The expert speakers, we're doing those 2 to 4 times a week. 2 to 4 times a month, an hour each. And these are experts. I'm among those speakers. I was one of the first, but we have now done 4 of them. And it's going to be something that people can go in, and if they're a member, if they've joined the membership, there's a classic membership and then there's a VIP membership. You can go in and watch them whenever you want to remember and get those tips and those ideas and those thoughts, because being a caregiver, you get distracted. And I can tell you honestly, in COVID, I get distracted a lot as a caregiver.
Well,
So,
and being a caregiver is, from what I understand, because I've not played this role, but how I listen to my friends and my community, being a caregiver is a little different than being a mom. Like there's a different level.
yeah. Well, you are a caregiver when you're a mom.
Yeah.
But being a caregiver for someone with a chronic disease is a little bit different. Now, there are children, obviously, with chronic diseases. Autism also changes the way you work with them and help them. But a chronic disease like Parkinson's, every day can be different. Every hour can be different. Medications are not always consistent. It is one of the most complicated diseases in the world, and it is now considered a pandemic on its own.
I would think that the level, though, of emotional entanglement every day, like the emotional exhaustion that comes from being a caregiver versus a mom, is a big difference.
It is, especially, my husband is the one I care for, but there are a lot of husbands caring for wives. We have a gentleman that comes on every week, unless something's going on. His wife has Parkinson's and cardiac issues and other issues. And so we try to guide people to feel better about what they're doing, and also to give them referrals. You might want to see a physical therapist, you might want to see a nutritionist that they're not even thinking about, because they're so distracted with every single day. Are they going to eat? Are they losing weight? Did he fall? Does he have to go to the hospital? My husband was in the hospital twice in April. I couldn't even go in with him. It was horrible. I can't even imagine people with COVID having to go through this. I can't.
Yeah. And
It
just
was hard enough for
navigating,
me.
helping other caregivers navigate a system that they're not familiar with, and helping, you are building a community of people. And
Yes.
we talked in the green room, in the pre-recording time, how important community is just for our own mental well-being. Like we
Right.
can't exist and grow in a vacuum. We need each other.
The thing is that there are many caregivers that pass away before their loved ones because of the stress, emotional and physical stress. And we have to stop that. These are mostly unpaid caregivers, but our group is for all caregivers, paid or unpaid, because we share things that paid caregivers need to know as well, that they wouldn't know. It's not taught. These are things that we've learned over the years. So
let me ask you to kind of round us out for this episode. I'm going to ask you, like I ask everybody else, what kind of advice would you give another business owner from what your experience has been?
I think my biggest thing is, don't go into it just for the money. You have to go into something, unless you're going to get in it to sell it, and that's all your purpose is. You need to have your heart and soul into it, because you're going to have to work really hard. You're going to have to learn to evolve and change as trends change and ideas change and opportunities, and you have to be open to opportunities. So I would just say, find something that you love and makes you happy, because you're going to do it every day, 24/7. Even if you're not physically doing it, it's in your head, it's in your heart.
Just like you are with Kat's Jewelry and Gems. I'm going to go ahead, shameless spin on that too, because I know that you still create jewelry to help supplement resources.
Can we take a break for a second?
Yeah, hang it. So Katherine, I know you got a lot of great jewelry that's still available. You have a new website as well. So I'm going to include the information on how people can contact you, not just for, adding a little bling that's for a good cause, right? But also if they want to learn more about Parkinson's Partners or Visionary Caregivers, what's the best way that they can do that?
Well, people can always call me. I don't mind people calling at night or on weekends. I'm used to that. I'm available a lot of the time. It's 502-314-8307. Again, that's 502-314-8307. And the easiest way to reach me is by phone if you have a specific question, because I'm okay with texting, but if it's a long thing I have to write, I'd rather talk to you or email you. So I would say my email for everything, if you want, is KAU, T as in Tom, I, N as in Nancy at AOL.com.
Okay.
I have separate emails for the other companies, but you can reach me there for Cats, Joy, and Gems, Visionary Caregivers, or Parkinson Partners. And you can go to the websites, parkinsonpartners.com, visionarycaregivers.com, and Cats, Joy, and Gems is actually KATS Jewelry Gems, GEMS. There's no A or and in there. So it's Cats, Jewelry, Gems. And I do sterling silver, pearls, gemstones, and I have something called Cool Loops, which I trademarked in 2002.
And those are really fun because they like everywhere and everything. I've got my own because we didn't make our own one night, and so I got to make my own. That's the silver blue and
and I'll be teaching people. I've already taught one of the caregivers on our Thursday mornings. I took her on a side thing and I taught her how to make Cool Loops so she can make some money if she wants. They're pretty easy to make and they're fast. So as a caregiver, they're another way to make a little bit of money if you want and have something fun.
Absolutely. Great. Well, Katherine, I do honestly hate to cut us short, but I know listeners only have so much listening capacity. So again, if you want to learn more about Katherine, I'm going to include that information in the description for this particular episode. There'll be links to each of the websites, also her social media, because I know we just set up business pages for that. So with that, I do want to thank you, Katherine, for being my guest today on Small Business Small Talk. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. It was great.
Yeah, I love that you added more detail to the story because there was a few things in there I was like, oh, I didn't even know that. And that would have irritated the shit out of me. But you're not the same.
There's, we all have stories. The backstory behind who we are and what made us who we are and what changed us and helped us evolve.
Yeah, and you're a great storyteller. I didn't even have to ask questions to like prod you on. So
I told you that you have to shut me up.
So for all of you still watching or listening, thank you so much for your time today for this episode of Small Business Small Talk. Join us again, and another shout out to our sponsor partner, the Chamber of St. Matthews, located here in Kentucky in the Louisville area. We are the third largest chamber in the region, and hopefully that'll grow next year. Like we keep getting awards, so we keep growing. So with that, join your local chamber if you're not in Kentucky or in the area. Definitely tap into a community of other small business like-minded folks such as us. You can always tap into our community here with Small Business Small Talk. We'd love to have you.
Also, Christy, real quick, I forgot to tell people we are starting a virtual Parkinson support group, which is being sponsored by one of the senior living facilities here in Louisville, and it's open to the public. So that's going to be Wednesday, October 21st at 1:30. If anybody's interested, call me or email me and I'll give you the link, or I'll send a link to Christy and she can upload it.
Yeah, let's get that link so we can get that shared out.
Yeah.
So that'd be great. And then again, back to community. Thank you again. Small Business Small Talk. We'd love to have you join us. So hit subscribe in whatever channel you're listening or watching in, because we're also YouTube, Facebook. We're kind of everywhere because we want to make sure we're available to you whenever you need us. So thank you again for your time, and to join us again on the next episode of Small Business Small Talk. I've been your host, Christy Smallwood. And again, I keep saying thank you, but I can't say it enough. Thank you.